Hey guys, it's Steve from Scooter King, and in this video we're going to be making some modifications to our existing Solar P series scooters. So there's a lot of different manufacturers that use this same kickplate design. So NANROBOT does, Roadrunner does, Yume does, Solar does. There's a lot of them out there. So this applies to a lot of different kinds of scooters, and we want to make a couple of modifications by adding a few bars to that kickplate design so that it doesn't have all those wide gaping holes like that in the back. And the aim here really is just to try to make it a whole lot more comfortable for longer rides. So for most riding, this actually works great, and it's a real stable platform, and you can rest your feet up here when you're doing long rides and stuff, and that stance actually works really well. So having that kind of double stance there where you have both your feet, like one on the deck and then one on the tailpiece there, this is probably the most common way to ride. The only problem arises is if you're wearing fairly narrow shoes, a lot of times you can kind of get stuck in that little channel back there, like your foot actually kind of gets stuck in it. And it's just because there isn't enough of those bars going from here all the way up to the tailpiece to support your foot completely. So today we're actually going to add some more of these bars in the spaces here. And you'll notice if you look really carefully here, one of the spaces is already pre-drilled. So you literally can just drop it in. So this is a really straightforward and super easy upgrade to do, and it makes a big difference about the way you ride your scooter when it's finished. So installing the first one couldn't be easier because we already have a hole drilled for it already here. And all of the frames that use this style, the style tailpiece. So these have been around for a while. The Yume Y series used this same frame. NANROBOT did. The Solar P1 and P1 Pro and even Roadrunner still use and manufacture this rear kickplate design. And they're all nearly identical, and they're all done exactly the same way. So this one is just super quick to put together. You simply slide the bar in. You might have to jostle it around a little bit to get it into place. And because of the hole itself, the holes on both sides are bigger than the screws, the only real hitch to this part is really just getting them in there and getting them kind of seated, correctly. Because then you got to move it around a little bit before you tighten it all the way up, just so you can get kind of it centered in the hole there. But that's no big deal. This goes together real quick. So that guy goes in there. Same thing on the other side, super straightforward. And then once these are in, or they're in the ballpark, and I usually like to put a little Loctite on here just to keep them from moving around. They don't move around very much though. I mean, they're not subject to a lot of wear and tear. So these, like I said, this is a really super easy installation. And it makes the tailpiece itself not only better looking, but a lot nicer to stand on. But it also secures the tailpiece a lot more too, because you're adding one more point of contact here. So these guys, once you get them kind of centered so that they're even, they just snug up into place. And as you can see, that's just the three. So this is already way better to put your foot on, just because it's, now it's a completely solid surface there. So you can see it's a lot more comfortable to put your foot on there. All right, so the only thing that remains now is we'd like to put one more here. There's no holes drilled in the frame for that. So these guys we're gonna actually have to measure and drill. So we're gonna measure the distance between each one of them, try to get this as even as we can. And it might actually make it a little easier if you take the fender off, but we didn't actually have to. So we've got a pretty good idea of where it's going to go, and then we're just going to make a bit of a measurement here for the center of the hole. And then that'll give us kind of where we're going to land here. And this is really just so that we have someplace to aim. Without getting terribly technical about this, we could pull it off and pull the frame off and pull the entire thing apart and put a metal punch in there and yada, yada, yada. But this doesn't really have to be anywhere near that complex. This is really pretty straightforward. We just need the general area so that it matches, the back one on both sides matches and it looks nice and straight. Because the Allen screws that come with these, the threads themselves are pretty stout. So they're not quite a quarter, they're right close to it. You'll see it when you use your own drill bit set. So instead of just going directly for the full size bit, we're actually going to use a smaller bit first. And that's going to kind of be our pilot hole. And that'll keep it from sort of going all over the place if we don't get it quite right. So we're just going to get our small pilot hole going first. And this is pretty soft metal, so it doesn't take a lot. So we're going to switch to the other side here, and now we're going to use our slightly larger bit that's the same size as the threads. It's actually just a hair larger than the threads because we need a little play for the bolt itself. So we're going to use the second one. All right, and then there's our hole. Once the hole is finished and it's drilled to the correct size, we're simply going to repeat the process for the other side. So we've already drilled both of the holes now, and they both line up nice and evenly. And we were able to kind of check our square and our distance just by inserting the Allen key in here. And you can see it makes for a pretty nice and straight hole. And because it's getting more snug as we go back, we're actually pushing the tailpiece together. It gets a little more snug for each one of these, so you have to kind of jostle them into place each time here. But they're still pretty straightforward to get in the ballpark here. So once you get them close, then you can simply take the screw and do the same thing, repeat the same process here. And it's easier if you don't snug this side all the way up in case you have to move this side around a little bit, because the other side sometimes, if you have a little bit of play in the drill bit or it skips or it doesn't get quite in the hole, sometimes you have to move it around just a hair to get it close. And before we snug both the bolts up here, we're going to leave them a little bit loose. And then we're going to take our Allen wrench and we're going to put it under that. And we're going to brace it up against the bar and we're going to press down. And this is just going to snug it up to the very top of the fin here, so that it makes it nice and even with the rest of them. So they're right up next to the fin, so that one's not dramatically lower than the other one. And then we'll snug these guys up. And these don't have to be very tight. You don't have to reef on these things. They're really just there as support. So it really doesn't take much just to snug them into place. And a little bit of Loctite helps with that as well. A little bit of blue Loctite really helps them kind of stay put and keeps them from moving around too much. And as you can see, it makes for a really sturdy tailpiece here. So you can put a surprising amount of weight on here now, because once you stand on that, now it's a flush surface completely. So you can stand way back on this thing. All right, so let's see how this feels. Oh yeah, that's so much nicer as far as a foot plate to stand on. It's a nice smooth surface now, all the way from the rubber deck up through that joint and all the way back. This is really a comfortable stance now. I think one of the first things I realize about this, just in terms of overall handling, is it's much more comfortable to have your foot back there, especially on this kind of uneven, like cobblestone surface or or brick surface like this. This is really uneven, and being able to put your foot much farther back like that and have it be comfortable where you're not constantly freaking out about whether or not it's going to fall into that little crevice is a lot easier to get a comfortable stance. And it makes you feel like you're more in control of the scooter as well. The Solar P-Series scooters are pretty lightweight already, so this adds a little bit of stability because you can lengthen your stance. And overall, that just makes the scooter a lot more stable. Just in terms of putting around like this, it's a lot more stable over uneven ground. And that's important. Like right here is a really good example. Going over this bridge, you don't have a lot of room here and traffic's whizzing by right next to you going pretty fast. It's nice to feel like you really have control of the scooter. And you really feel like, you know, your feet are firmly planted and you really feel like you've got, hey guys, you really feel like you've got complete control over it. And I think that's really important. So this has really helped in that regard. This has really made it feel like you're just really solid, really in control. So there's a couple of quick modifications that you can do on your Solar P-Series scooter, or really any scooter that uses this frame style, and there's a bunch of them out there. And as you saw, super quick. The whole thing took me about 30 minutes, start to finish, and even with the drilling for the fourth hole, if you don't use the fourth hole, this is super fast. 5 minutes tops, because the third hole, or in this case, the second hole from the bottom, is already drilled for you. So it really is just as simple as installing the parts. I ordered them directly from Solar. We ordered them to match the color motif, and it ends up really looking great, and you end up with a killer looking scooter. But more importantly, a super comfortable ride, especially for longer rides for sure. Hey, if you learned something or if this was helpful in any way, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It really does help keep a young channel that's just getting started like this out, and it helps me make more videos like this as well. Have fun, ride safe. We'll catch you guys in the next video.